Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. And I wanted to get a logo for Certification Station. Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor, and I want to share with you guys just some. To me, one of the biggest problems in security right now, perhaps the biggest, and we know how to fix it. Well, we've had some technologies to do it. We just don't always like we get our head around what it does for us. So PKI, the public key infrastructure, is empowering our world now. I mean, this is how all identity management. That's what we're going to really get in our head today. Uh, middle is now done with PKI. It's not encryption that most people think of. It's not, this isn't how I encrypt my hard drive. It's really to make sure that only Bob, say, has the key to the safe, but it's not the key to the safe. Let's see, the key to the safe is the encryption key that encrypts everything in the safe. You know, but the key to the safe can't be put in the safe. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge. So, how do I make sure that only the right people have that key? And then, of course, how do you digitally sign things? I mean, and this is what finance is changing. The 2020s, this decade is going to change, you know, everything around the world just from the blockchain technologies and our Bitcoin. You know, the future of money and everything is changing like that. So it's all related around this stuff. And as I say, it's one of the biggest misunderstandings when I teach a class. So for those of you who know what I do, I'm a these days primarily a CISSP certification trainer. I prepare people, and I've been doing it since 2001. I started out working under Sean Harris with Clement Dupuis, and we made friends then. Uh, and I also do CCSP and C-RISC and CISM. But this is like the heart of so many information security classes anyway. So it really helps anything. Security Plus, knowing all this stuff really helps. So let's take quick tour through this. So one of the things that's changing in society too is what is information security. So if when you think about, you know, those of you studying for CISSP or whatever, you know about the CIA triad. You got to protect confidentiality. You know, sure, confidentiality is important when you're competing. Sure, you know, and the Eagles, the football team, they don't tell the Dallas Cowboys their plays. You know, that wouldn't help. That you gotta maintain that when you're competing. Um, but that's not all information security is about. And as we watched over the last a couple of years after COVID and some of the biggest exploits on the internet, they were exploits of DLLs, the Solar Winds attack and Log4j and stuff. And what they're doing is you know, today's applications are written by one guy. Mitch Kapoor wrote Lotus, if anybody remembers that. But today, like the Dropbox or the Zoom software you're using right now, Zoom didn't write all of this. They collaborate with, well, Amazon, AWS, and a lot of other things. And it's more important that the DLLs haven't been modified and are available. This is supply chain management. So information security is more than just maintaining secrets, right? And PKI helps both. Where PKI comes into play, of course, everyone thinks about encrypting your whatever your secret stuff, and that's what confidentiality does. Encryption can do that. But what's changing the world, Bitcoin and all the blockchain technologies, these ledgers that are, you know, incorruptible or so, that's integrity. Blockchain is also based on PKI. And if we don't have, right, so this is where PKI comes in. It's for both of these. The public key infrastructure is to make sure that when I get somebody's public key, you know, their certificate or whatever, it really was Bob, you know, and then only Bob will be able to see any, you know, confidential competitive information. The problem with confidentiality, if when the competition is not friendly, and there's a great book I just finished called The Dawn of Everything on this. When competition went from, hey, let's have a game in Crete, they were very competitive culture for like 2,700 years, nothing bloody. They just have these games where they jump over bulls. But when they start killing people, competition becomes unfriendly. And as AI takes over, our biggest problems are not that the AI Alexa is going to become smarter than I am. I like to say my Roomba vacuum cleaner is not going to get a BIOS update, become smarter than Larry, and demand that I do the vacuuming from now on. No, the problem with AI is that they might be biased, and then it doesn't realize, oh, that's not necessarily true that only men should vote and women can't, right? That turns out to be a very biased decision, and over the last, few years, century or so, we finally admitted that. So these are the problems. And PKI solves this. As far as the availability, that's our cloud technology. That's for another discussion. I do the CCSP class, and I have one next week. And by the way, all of you people are invited to sit that class for free. So there'll be more details coming up on that. Star Trek fan, and if you've never heard this TV show or not familiar, Star Trek is about all these people from different countries and different worlds, different planets, and they all work together as a team and they collaborate. It's not about competing; it's about collaborating. Secure, and we have one. We actually have an organization just like that, and that's the ISO. Many people think the ISO, by the way, is an acronym for International Standards Organization. No, it's actually a word. It comes from the Greek ISO, as in ISIS to be equal. And currently there are 167 member bodies from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. And if the PKI certificate, the public key says it's Bob, I don't care what country you're in, we're going to treat him that way. And that's how you know that this place is who it is. This is how you know you're at Zoom, is because Zoom gave you their certificate, right? So where we are today, what we're going to look at is the part that most people don't think about, and it's new. I mean, we've had symmetric encryption since we've had writing. We've been doing this stuff for a long time. Let me get my color here. We've been doing symmetric encryption, a shared secret. You encrypt data, you put keys in the safe, and you have the secret handshake, whatever. And Bob and Alice have to know the key. But you can't put the key to the safe in the safe. So that's where PKI came in. That's where what Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman came up with the key exchange protocol, right? So how do you share this? How do I make sure only Bob gets that key? And we've had some form of integrity checkers for a long time, whatever. Did the canary die in the coal mine, or whatever, the wax seal on the envelope? But was the seal broken? But the wax seal from the king it's like our private key that encrypts the wax seal. How do I know that that wax seal is our king's, And that's when you sign things. What we're talking about today are the asymmetric encryption algorithms that do that. Now, today, when you study CISSP, you often have to learn history. Who invented the protocol? Blah, blah, blah. We don't care today. The only protocols that you can use in the Federation, today the ISO, the only thing that's going to be 27001 certified that you're going to be allowed to use or whatever, is most people think RSA. Everybody's familiar with RSA. But RSA is nowhere near as efficient as elliptical curve. And it's kind of funny to me that the ISC square that's where I learned about it. Oh, it's far more efficient. Yeah, that's why wireless people adapted it first. What does the ISC square still use to validate their key? They have an RSA certificate. Google has been using elliptical curve for like 10 years. Don't want to pick on the ISC square. I want to represent them fairly. It's been a great ride. But this is the stuff. So if you're in this field, you have two choices. In theory, I could get, say, an S-MIME certificate. I could create one as RSA or elliptical curve, and I have a tool that can do that here. Make sure I have it loaded here. Cleopatra is a tool that can do this, and this is a great little tool here. You can create a key pair. It's already in the middle of the wizard, and I could do PGP or X.509. This just means, how is the key formatted? But either way, the algorithms are the same. I'm either going to use RSA or elliptical curve. If it's PGP, this is like a company ID card. All I do is create my company ID card. But an X.509 certificate, that's like a passport. That's used around the world from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. And I can't print that certificate myself. I can't make my own passport. But what I can do is create a request. So what that means is I can fill out the form, put in my required fields, my name, pick my algorithms, yeah, um, and then put that request to say somebody who certifies that. Oh, I thought I had a browser open there. Let's go to another browser here, and we will go to Google and say I have an X.509 certificate, X.509 certificate, whatever, and I want to use it for SMIME. And I want to purchase, I want to pay for somebody to sign this. And there's all these places that say, oh, you can hear or whatever, SMIME certificates, you can go to them. Now, I haven't checked everybody, but when I do check, I can't actually do that, what I was supposed to do. Yeah, what they want me to do is not use my key pair tool. They go, no, we have our own key pair tool, Larry. First step, go to our tool and create your RSA key. And I go, no, I don't want to do that. I want to use elliptical curve. And I mentioned to you, by the way, that elliptical curve is far more efficient. And we've had it out for 20 years. It is actually a requirement in SMIME. 4.0 at the say site. Oh, am I doing this? Site colon IETF.org, and that's the Internet Engineering Task Force. They're the standards organization for the internet. And I picked. Okay, so this came out in 2019, and this is for mail, for certificates, and how it will work. And I double check Control F, and I put an elliptical curve, say Diffie-Hellman for key exchange, and it says it must support it. Yeah, okay, it's not just me. It must support elliptical curve, must. But none of the tools I've tried allow me to do this when I try to purchase it. So this is where the framing of where I'm trying to tell you we are today. We know what to do. Some of us do, but it hasn't rolled out enough. We're at the very knee of the curve or the beginning of the curve to get this working. And my goal is to share what I know, because as my wife points out, don't make fun of people, Larry. You're as guilty as anybody in doing things wrong here. So I will not do that. I will just share what I can do, right? Oh, I think I have the slide already loaded here somewhere. Hey, Larry, where's my slideshow? I'm just going to share what I know, and that is to get us smarter about what this stuff does. And again, for the Federation, you have two choices. Most people apparently think RSA is your only choice, but I hope at least if you get nothing else out of this, elliptical curve is far better. Now, you may have heard that quantum computing is going to break the internet. No, it's not. I wouldn't worry about it. I've heard doomsday scenarios before, but NIST is also ready just in case they do break something. What quantum computing can do is possibly reverse the so-called one-way algorithms, elliptical curve and RSA. It does not affect, quantum computing has nothing to do with symmetric encryption or hashing. Quantum computing threatens the strength of asymmetric algorithms only. Bitcoin, by the way, is using elliptical curves. So some people go, oh, it's going to break Bitcoin. No, it'll probably be a patch that you run overnight. And the patch will be one of the newer algorithms that NIST is currently moving on to round 4. They've already got the 3rd round of selection. I think it was supposed to be done if it wasn't for COVID, but whatever, we're going to get there. And we have algorithms lined up. So Not to worry, not to worry. Sky is not going to fall. So I said that PKI is used for identity management. Bob can claim to be Bob. When you claim to be somebody, you know, that somebody needs some validation that it's really you. You know, especially I've never. And ultimately, it's like, you know, when you meet somebody, this is my friend. It's some trusted third party. Hey, this is Bob. I'm Bob. You know, but it could be a nicer certificate. The PKI certificates are used just for that. So when we generate these things, some of these are required fields. I have to put in my name, Larry. I have to put in my email address, and if I'm going to use this for email, right? So certificates can be used for many different purposes. In fact, the ones that got hacked in, I want to make sure I have the XCA tool loaded here. The ones that got hacked in SolarWinds. So when you look at why we have a certificate, so I would create a private public key pair, and I say I'm going to use it for email, and that's for signing and non-repudiation, allow me to create keys and key agreement. So that would be a normal, you know, X.509 certificate. If I were a certificate authority, I'd be able to sign certificates and sign CRLs. Right? I guess you could create something where you just highlight everything. You go, I'm everything. I have a driver's license that allows me to drive a motorcycle, a car, a plane, whatever. And that's what they did in SolarWinds, by the way. So, but we'll know how to fix it, and then we're gonna get better at this. So in this case, you put in some required fields, and then you use your certificate. Again, this is how you knew it was Zoom or Dropbox or wherever. So you create your private public key pair. Now for the ISO itself, the ISO, by the way, is the standard. The reason somebody has a name like this person at this company at this organization type or this service, you know, www.zoom.com or whatever, that format is the X.500 format. It's an old, I think it started in the late 80s, but became standardized by the ISO in the 90s. In the 90s. Some of you kids weren't even born when this was made. So that's when you claim to be that name. That's your name on the internet. That's right. A certificate is to make people reasonably certain, not 100% certain. Nothing's, you know, I got a COVID vaccine. I was reasonably certain, like 97%. So when I say certain, it's rarely 100%. I am not 100% fireproof, but I'm fireproof enough that I don't worry about it. Okay. So X.509 certificates validate the X.500 name. And the ISO, www.iso.org, this service has a certificate themselves. When I go to their website and you click on, you know, the lock or whatever, and you get to see what it is, you can see they use an RSA key of 2048 bits. That's their private public key pair. I said elliptical curve would be better, right? You guys are awfully quiet. You know, you're allowed to ask questions. Otherwise, we're going to go really far. So I showed you the tool. Cleopatra is a great tool. In fact, I have a 5-hour day version of this class coming up. And thanks so much, by the way, to Ben Armstrong, Ben, for helping me out with this and giving me a chance here. And I hope I do your customers and your members well. But I shared with Ben, and I know he put it up there. I have 3 5-hour days coming up. And I want to go into deeper. We'll do labs. We'll work through these tools, particularly Cleopatra to create private public key pairs. We'll put them into our into our Thunderbird, and we'll show how we could do end-to-end encryption in mail. So Bob will be able to do end-to-end encryption either with a PGP or an X.509 SMIME certificate. Again, either way, it's the same RSA or elliptical curve algorithms. It's just that PGP is when you make your own company ID card, and as long as everybody trusts, the company or whatever, or your friends, you can do it among all whatever certification station members. But SMIME is federated. That means from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, all around the world, all members of the ISL will believe that passport, that ID card is valid. So we'll do this stuff in that class, and I'd love to see some people there and walk people through it. So yeah, I mentioned now when you do your elliptical curve. Oh, please explain the difference in RSA. Yeah, we're going to see that very quickly. Very quickly, I could explain this. The reason it's better, so to speak, or stronger, is processing speed. And if very quickly, and then in my other class, I can go very deeply, but think of a bicycle lock that has 4 wheels on it, or even an ATM pin, right? If you have 4 digits in your pin, right? I would put an hour down. Sure, why not? I would put an hour for this. If you have a 4-digit pin with a symmetric encryption algorithm, if you're encrypting it with AES and all you have is 4 digits, and you go 0, 0, 0, 0 through 999, you have 10,000 possible keys. If you were using elliptical curve, it cuts that in half. You would only really have 5,000. But if you were using RSA or Diffie-Hellman, you would have far less. Only the prime numbers would work. RSA and Diffie-Hellman only allow prime numbers to be keys. And yeah, that's for a deeper reason. But overall, the next slide will kind of show you at a high level what I'm talking about. So now elliptical curve has all kinds of standards and stuff too. Their elliptical curve could be done by NIST, and they have a 521, which is actually the same as the Brainpool 512. We're not going to, again, these are details we can get in the 3-day version. But here's what I meant. If I have a bicycle lock or an ATM, that actually used to be a CISSP test question. There was an ATM pin question where you have 4 digits, how many possible combinations are there? And in encryption, we use the term entropy. How many possible, and we measure entropy in bits. So if I have one bit of entropy, then you will either have a 0 or a 1 as a key. Right? But if you have 2 bits of entropy, you have 4 keys. Right? So AES being a symmetric encryption algorithm, we assume everything is potentially a key. So if I have 128 bits of entropy, then I have 128 bits of possible keys. But since I can only use prime numbers, to get 128 bits of entropy, I would need 3,000 bits of RSA. Now we saw the ISOs only using 2,000. I'm a network nerd. This is something else we'll show. We'll do some packet traces on the 5-day. But for anybody who understands network protocols, the MTU size, maximum transmission unit, this is like a container. Containers that fit on ships, that fit on trucks, that fit on trains, that fit on planes. That's what a packet is. You could fit a container on a ship that would never fit on a truck, so that's the smallest containers, or the one that fit on just trucks. That's the MTU size. The smallest MTU or the biggest MTU you can have on the internet is 1,500 bytes. 1,500 bytes is the largest packet anything could be. So this already takes 2 packets, but elliptical curve only needs twice. 1,500 bytes, I put 256 in there, and I still have leg room left over for a certificate revocation list or whatever else. So it's far more efficient. And they don't even get to this. The strongest RSA I've ever seen is 4,000 bits. To get the equivalent entropy of an AES 256-bit key, I would need 512 bits. I'm still not, basically a third of a packet on the internet. But now I'm up to like 12 packets just to do a certificate exchange. So this has to go away. This has to go away. Don't believe the hype. Don't buy the RSA. It's not, unless they find a backdoor. And again, Bitcoin shows elliptical curve. Yeah, so I go to the ISC Square, and they're the ones I learned about it, and I look at their certificate, and this is their X.500 name. The X.509 certificate is validated with an RSA 248K, which is less than 128 bits of entropy. But I could get 128 bits of entropy. Google has been doing this for years using elliptical curve at 256. So bigger is not always better. It's faster and stronger. All right, so there's a lot of quantum hype out there. No, it's going to break everything. Quantum computers are going to like do awesome stuff. Maybe they will, but I know a lot of people are like, including Google claimed quantum supremacy, I think in 2018, and something we could discuss later in more detail. But that means that basically a quantum computer. What is the formula, Larry? That formula is that it's based on the exponential requirements of how many um, uh, primes there are, prime numbers. Again, because RSA and the elliptical curve Phi-Hellman can only use primes. All right, so Google claims a quantum supremacy, and the idea is that, at a high level, that a bit in classical computers is 1 or 0, so 1 bit of entropy, or processing. I have, I could do 2 operate, do 2 or 4. By the time I get 8, it's 256, blah, blah, blah. But it's not 2 to the n with quantum. They have 3 possible choices. A bit can be either 1 or 0 or some other undetermined. I tell you, I equate it with the Chinese game of Go, really. If you look at the Chinese game of Go, and how many possible, and actually binary math and Chinese game of Go actually got the same start. So they're both based on an old Chinese book called the Book of Changes. And that's where they introduced the concept of yin and yang. And on the game, they point out that it's not just yin or yang. If you look at the board, what do you call those places where there isn't a piece there? So when there's a piece there, it's either yin or yang, it's 1 or 0. But when there's no piece there, it's superposition. So the number of moves in the Chinese game of Go is always 3 to the n. And it's exponential. So with 48 bits, you would exceed the highest the processing speed capability of any classical computer at the time of the writing, which was 2018. Google claims they get it, and Google. And they're one of the top engineer over there for AI is Ray Kurzweil, and he says not so fast. He claims quantum supremacy, but not so fast, say many people. And Ray Kurzweil works for Google. And what does he say about quantum computing? Not a fan. And he said, well, the problem is, he said, they questioned him on an interview right after Google makes the claim. So it's all over the news, And he says, well, he doesn't want to pick on his home company. He goes, the problem with quantum computing is there's a randomness to it, and we can't always predict the actual outcome. And in computing results to mathematical equations, that result comes out as an error. Randomness means errors. And he goes, and if you're getting errors in your results, I don't consider that a usable computer. So he is no fan. I don't know. Sabine Hassenfelder is one of my favorite people. I've got to thank you, Google's AIs, for recommending. She is a physicist and a great presenter in the likes of Neil deGrasse Tyson or Brian Greene or any of these guys, if you like watching them. And she's points out in this wonderful video, don't fall for quantum hype. We're not really that close to quantum computing, according to a lot of people. I don't know. I know people think it's going to drop any data and the whole world's going to change. And they're like, yeah, except for the error part, which we may never, ever, ever solve. So I don't know. But there's an actual CISSPs need to know two things. There are two questions on a CISSP test about this problem, about quantum computing. Quantum computing refers to a computer that could do 3 to the n, and there's another characteristic about it. But the other one is called quantum encryption. That's different. It would be a countermeasure. You could put it under a post-quantum cryptography, but NIST didn't use quantum encryption. Quantum encryption borrows another concept about now the randomness in quantum can be good if you're creating keys. When you're I got to think of a number between 1 and a trillion, and you pull out some number, a pseudo-random number generator. How random is it? Quantum supposedly would give us perfect randomness in making up the key. Not in encrypting data. This is how do I just get a key to the safe? How do I make up a key to the safe? How do I make up a strong password? But there's another thing about it that's really weird and far beyond the scope of this. And if you're like, hey, I want to understand this, let me show you something. My favorite speaker from the United States on this concept, it's like, don't bother. Richard Feynman says, if you think you understand quantum computing, you don't understand, or if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand it. So the part that's weird to understand is called entanglement. That if two particles or two things ever touch each other, they are entangled. So no matter how far away they are separated across space and maybe across time, this is really weird. But whatever the case is, if you do something to one, the other one's going to notice, no matter how far apart they are, instantly. It's hard to understand. Why is this useful in computers? Suppose you generated, all right, we'll make up a password using that concept. Bob and Alice know the thing. But if someone somehow guesses the password, it will change the password. That's what it's called. All right, without going there, China claims they got it. China, and we've actually been doing quantum, not computing, encryption ourselves. It's a key agreement protocol. It's like the Diffie-Hellman, of that that we've been able to do it over a short distance. I think it was like 1,000 meters for many years. And the ISC square had been started asking questions about it. I first heard of quantum encryption questions on the exam in like 2005. I think you gotta be crazy. By 2017, China figured it out, apparently, over large distances, and they create passwords, keys to their satellites using quantum encryption. And the basic takeaway, what makes it's perfect encryption. Well, on the one hand, it's a truly random, it's a strong thing. It's not going to come up with password 123. But more perfect about it is that if the NSA or anybody ever guesses the key because of entanglement, it'll break it. It's like if someone sniffed your password, you know it. So it makes, sniffing basically or whatever, a password guessing an active attack. But okay, that's pretty weird. And nowhere on NIST's final list. If you go, again, NIST is well aware of post-quantum computing. All right, they've been. This was supposed to be updated, I think, a year ago, but at some point they're going to select the winner. So again, asymmetric algorithms don't encrypt data. We do that with our AES today. In fact, the only Federation encryption algorithm, you may have to study DES and Bluefish and whatever for your test, RC4, RC5. You're not going to use them in the Federation. You're not going to get GDPR compliant. You're only going to use AES 128, or you're going to use AES 256 for now. When you're hashing, you're going to use SHA, but you're going to use your asymmetric encryption. your public-private key pair. Your public key is going to be used for key establishment. I'm going to make up a shared key, a key that for the safe, and I want to make sure only Alice gets it. I'm going to get Alice's public key, and I'm going to use that. I think of a random number and I encrypt it with her public key, and only her identity can get the key to the safe. And we have finalists for key agreement. You know, RSA, you could do both, but even elliptical curve, it's actually a different algorithm for signing than it is for key agreement. So we've got this excuse me, classic Cleese, Crystals, Kyber, and Entru, and Sabre. 4 algorithms. We're going to select one of them to be the key establishment. This will be like the Diffie-Hellman of post-quantum, but I need a signing algorithm. And there's only 3 that made it here: Rainbow, Falcon, and as a Star Trek fan, I have to root for Crystals dilithium. Let's hope. Come on, please. It's so funny. So the world's not going to break apart if quantum computing happens. And to be fair to those who are pushing quantum computing, outside the scope of this presentation, quantum sensing is different than quantum computing. And quantum sensing can pick up weird, you know, we're always looking for sensors to do non-obvious relationship, whether it's an intrusion detection or just market, opportunities. And so she is a fan of quantum sensing, but she doesn't think we're all that close to quantum computing. Sure sells a lot. She's also very funny. So what is the primary use of an X.509 certificate or X.509 certificates? Anybody want to type in? I'll give you some time. I actually remember to make coffee, special keto chocolatey coffee. The question, can you not see it? What is the primary use of an X.509 certificate? Very good. Yeah, there you go. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I probably could have read that better. But yes, someone got it. To validate a claimed identity. You claim an X.500 name. Yeah, it'd be nice if I had like an A or B, C, D or a number next to it. That might help too, Tanya. Yeah, but the overall purpose when you get your certificate, you know, on the internet, we all have names now. And it's weird because if I've been teaching S-MIME and PGP for over 20 years. How often has anyone here, when was the last time anybody here got a PGP or an S-MIME signed email or encrypted one to a friend? It's like we have a highway here with license plates all figured out for cars, trucks, and for drivers. You know, the system is when you have a www.Microsoft or a service, that's like having a truck or a car. When it's like this person that's like the driver of the car, right? And only the trucks have certificates. Only the web servers have certificates. Very few drivers have certificates right now. So this is where we are, and we need to fix this. You know, we need to roll it out. I'd say that the deployment of S-MIME after 30 years of standardization is probably 2%, maybe even that's like ambitious. All of my military, most of my students, by the way, I've been teaching now for a little over 20 years, and most of it is U.S. military, and they all have on their CAC, they all have on their card a private, you know, their certificate, and it's got this, so they have that, but most people don't. Most people, so it's we need to roll it out. We need to get this worked out. Why are symmetric algorithms preferred for data envelope content encryption versus asymmetric algorithm? Why is it I don't encrypt my data with RSA? Why is that still with AES? Why? You know, the key to the safe This speed, yeah, because they 128 bits, that's 128 bits of entropy. Every key works, but if you wanted that many keys with RSA, you need 15,000 bits. Yeah, speed. There's a basic thing in any process, right? Oh, I got a message, by the way. You may have lost my audio. I apologize. So what I was saying is that when you do project management, anybody doing project management knows you have a scope of where you need to go. We're going to sail the ship from here and we got to get to this place. We're going to go from England to China to get some tea. We got to get back here. And I have two ways to get there. And one way is 1,000 times faster. That's AES versus encrypting your data. Yes. Why is authentication so important to security? You lost my UDP for about 5. That's about, yeah. Now, if we were moved over to the quick protocol, now I could save that for another talk, but I don't know how many people noticed a little over a year ago today, the end of TCP may have come out, right? TCP may days are numbered now. We're going to the quick protocol. But anyway, why is authentication so important in security? What's the overall big deal here? What went wrong in SolarWinds? And Bruce Schneier, one of the great heroes of information security, says, "Oh, that's it. Burn it down. We got to start all over again." Delta, yeah, and that's just my thing. There's a great writer, a great business analyst. His name is Dan Sullivan. He's the head of strategic coach, and he always starts off with, in any development life cycle, you start with who, and that's what I always say too. Every development life cycle, whether you go to a restaurant, who's going to the restaurant? Yeah. There's a new policy for whatever data encryption. Who does it apply to? And if you get that wrong, the project initiation always starts with the W's, who, what, where, when, and then you do the hows, and who was first. And if you get that wrong, does it matter how strong your locks are? If you think the attacker is the president of the company? So you get who wrong, nothing else matters. And today, this is done through PKI. This is how we're going to do it. And it's not just, defending yourself from attackers. It's just basically protecting yourself from accidents. Who doesn't own hundreds of Bitcoin? This guy. Is it because I didn't believe in the technology when it was only a $200 a coin? I believed in it big time, but I also knew that I would be the type of guy to forget where my password was, forget the damn passphrase, and couldn't prove that it was me. I have to be able to prove that it's me. That's why, 4 million of the potential 21 million Bitcoins are probably gone. Honestly, I really, really wanted my wife to invest, and she's much better at these things. And she's like, you don't understand. But finally, about 3-4 years ago, I guess it was 2017, I got her, please buy some Bitcoin. It's not as much as I wanted to own. But anyway, we're getting there. Now, I'd say we're about 2% deployed. But let's imagine we got everybody certificates. This means, again, so if you look at the way PKI is deployed, X.509 certificates, you see them every time you go to a web server. Oops. That's where in fact, this all was developed, in the 90s and rolled out for anybody my age, if you remember, when banking was to be done on the internet. So when they had already developed SSL, secure socket layer, using this type of thing. But the encryption, the symmetric encryption algorithm at the time was RC4, and it was 40 bits. And in order to do banks, they had calculated, no, it's got to be 128. So if anybody remembers, you would install the patch from Microsoft on your NT 4.0, maybe even 3.5.1, I think it was 4.0 workstation, and you'd have to click, I promise I will not export this to an unfriendly country or whatever. And that's when you started seeing the lock. That's what this is for, to make me reasonably certain that it is them. The connection is secure because their certificate is valid, blah, blah, blah. So all servers have certificates, most of them anyway, not all of them. They're not free. And they're not easy to manage, like Larry forgetting his, worried about forgetting my Bitcoin. Outside of servers, not too many people have them. I don't have one to send SMON. I have PGP that I send between 2 or 3 people. That's it. I don't get PGP from almost anybody. So it's tough. But even if we did deploy it, here's an issue. Let's look at the certificate path on this. Why do I believe that this is NIST.gov? Well, it was issued to NIST.gov by the Department of Motor Vehicles, their credential service provider, in this case, R3. So R3 is a certificate authority that's allowed to sign these certificates. How do I know R3? I go to my certificate manager in Microsoft. Now, these are handled at an application layer, something more for another class. It's not at an OS level. So every app can have a different, Firefox has a different list, Dropbox has a different list, but forget that. All Microsoft stuff is going to use this if I were using Edge or whatever. And these are the root CAs. These are the certificate authorities from the federation at the top level that get to sign, and then so well, if they said, if DigiCert says it's you, it must be you. Where did this come from again? This came from R3. Do I know who they are? No, I don't know who they are. So why do I trust them? Let's check the path on this. Oh, R3 is just an intermediate. The root from the federation is ISRG root. Okay, so that's why I trust them. And how did these lists get in here? Well, it depends. I don't see Let's Encrypt as a root. They're an intermediate. I don't trust any of these. You know why? Because all it takes is some whatever PowerShell script to go import. And how do I get somebody to run the PowerShell script? How about with a cat video where the cat's playing the piano? I mean, I know I would probably click on it. It's playing the piano. I got to see that. I'm a musician too. And that's how I was able to install this evil CA. And we can do this in my upcoming 3-day. We'll do that. We'll create root C certificates and then just have people click on it or whatever, and then they install it. And now this guy can claim anything. And this is a problem. If we were to have certificates deployed everywhere, instead of just 2%, but everybody got them. The problem is it's really easy to set up a phony DMV or credential service provider. Now, Microsoft in this recognized 77 trusted roots. They got here because Microsoft put them there. They're not like, they weren't shipped down by the Federation. Nobody from the Federation shipped these here. In fact, the Federation has close to 200. I don't know why Microsoft only chose 77. And I know they didn't choose 77 because that's not one of them. So as we're closing up here, my last thing I want you to take away is that even if we deploy it, we have to fix this problem. We have to fix that the root CA list can't be vulnerable to a single point of failure like this. And Bitcoin can't be, by a cat video, because if these were Bitcoin miners, instead of just, one, these are all self-signed certificates. But if they were Bitcoin miners, I couldn't just get one evil CA and then everybody, and one miner's bad. No, you'd have to get, well, you didn't need to get all 77. But if I got 50% and 51%, if I got a half plus one, that would be good enough. It is a consensus protocol. So like, fireproofing my house, Bitcoin doesn't really make things fireproof. It's not 100% certain against corruption. It is exponentially better than what we got now. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for far better than what we have, and that's what we got to do. So I think the CA's one fix would be to do this. One fix. There are other people saying that we got to start all over. This is what was really compromised really badly in solar winds, and there's been other attacks since then. All right, so thank you so much. But I just the takeaways here is that PKI is not used to do data encryption or anything, and it's not a digital signature until you hashed it first. No, it's just to validate the source of the hash. It's to make sure that either it came from Bob or only Bob gets the key to the safe. Our public keys are used to encrypt session keys to make sure only whatever Bob gets the key to the safe. I would encrypt it with Bob's public key. Private keys are used to sign hashes. They encrypt the hash, and that's how we sign. And lastly, as a CISSP or any ISC square person, our goal, the code of ethics. And in this stage of AI, many people argue it is ethics are the worst, our biggest challenge right now. We have technology to solve anything. AI can fix anything, but AI has to know what's right. And my favorite scientist on this was Buckminster Fuller, who basically the common good from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, that when you create a technology, when you perform a service, it should advantage everyone without disadvantaging anyone. And now you're doing it for the common good, isn't it? That primary code of ethic for the ISC square. So, I love it. Old little commercial, but certification station members, if you're interested in my yearly membership, please send an email to sales at InterNetwork Defense, and we can get you 50% off that. And so other than that, I'm here. When is your next? Yes, the CCSP starts next week, 12 to 5, Tuesday through Friday. I had to do a special shifting around as a dad who was needed. My youngest is about to go away. I'm going to become an empty nester for the first time in a long time, and I had to do something for her. All right, I'm going to stop the recording now, but I'm going to hang out. And again, thank you all, and thank you so much, Certification Station and Ben Armstrong for making this possible. Bye.